Welcome to Whiskey Lake Raceway. Whiskey Lake Raceway is a 3/8-mile dirt oval track located at the north edge of Marshall Army Airfield at Fort Riley at exit 301 off Interstate 70 in central Kansas. The cities of Junction City and Grandview Plaza are immediately east of the racetrack. To the west is Manhattan and Kansas State University. Fort Riley Army Installation and Marshall Army Airfield border the track. The racing complex is less than 1 mile from Interstate 70. Fort Riley is a premier permanent Army installation. Presently stationed at Marshall Army Airfield is the Helicopter Aviation Unit. To expand the runway for the Army Airfield for larger fixed-wing aircraft would require the government to purchase the racetrack complex consisting of approximately 27 acres. The racetrack was built in the late 1970s. Doug and Roger Thompson purchased the racetrack in the mid-'80s and have owned it continuously. The racetrack has had several leaseholders over the years or been operated by the Thompsons. The racing complex features a concrete wall along the front straightaway, bleachers, concession stand, stadium lighting, and its own water pumping system with a nearly inexhaustible supply of water. Historically, the racetrack has hosted events for late models, modified, sprint cars, as well as other support classes. The racetrack is the birthplace of the mini-stock class and also the location where NASCAR star Clint Boyer won his first feature event. The close proximity of the real estate to Fort Riley makes the land very valuable for multiple applications in addition to a racetrack. In the 1990s, the racetrack had a formal appraisal with a value of over $380,000. Since the appraisal, a nearly inexhaustible supply of water has been tapped into with a new water distribution system with a value in excess of $400,000. The racetrack has a population base of at least 100,000 people within a 20-mile radius of the track. The racetrack is less than 40 miles from Salina to the west, 60 miles to Topeka to the east. For further information concerning the racetrack, contact either Doug or Roger Thompson at 785-922-6678 or email us at karm@eaglecom.net. Thanks for watching our video.
I was going to say, I was impressed when I drove in here, like you say, and that's one thing I think a lot of promoters forget about is just the general appearance of the track when fans come in to see it, to go to the races. To me, a racetrack needs to be more than just the races because, you want them fans leaving with a good image.
It has to be a place they want to come back to. And if they can come into the environment we have, just like we have trees and shade here, and we try to give them the nicest and cleanest place we can, from the food right down to the racing.
Okay, now I understand also that there is quite a history behind Whiskey Lake Raceway as far as how it got its name. Could you kind of fill everybody in on that?
Yes, I can. You need to go back to about 1824 or the 1820s. People don't realize that where we're standing right now was a crossroads for all kinds of trails west. I mean, a lot of them. And most of the information I got was from the Geary County Historical Society. But in the 20s, this was the trails would all cross right through this site. This was a river, and we're only about a half a mile from the river right now. Kansas River, yeah. And in 1840s, about 1847, the last steamship came down this river. And there's some parts of it in the museum in the Historical Society in Junction, pictures of it, full-size, 4-story steamship. And regularly steamships came to this point. This is the westernmost point that a steamship could come to. And they would unload their supplies and wagons and everything for the pilgrims that were here. There was 7 tents on this site. And those 7 tents were filled up with various supplies, but mostly beer and whiskey. And in the 1850s, 2 things happened. One was we had a plague in this area. And Dr. Irwin Army Hospital was named after him, loaded up his family and left in about 1855, I think, something like that. The soldiers used to come over here. We're only We're less than a mile from Main Post. And
That's all right. Go ahead.
Anyway, the soldiers used to come over from Main Post. They'd swim across the river.
Oh, really?
And they'd come over here and they'd get all drunked up on the beer and whiskey. And then when they tried to get back, they'd drown. And the commander sent his top cop, which is the provost marshal in the Army, with some MPs. They came over here and dumped all the beer and whiskey from those tents into this lake. And it became known then as Whiskey Lake. There's a big article in the Topeka Capitol I didn't realize Topeka Capitol was even there at that time, but it was. And they did a big article about dumping it in there, and it became known as Whiskey Lake. The other thing, this point right over here, just as you come into the racetrack, at the turn of the century, around 1900, was Junction City's Country Club.
Oh.
And that corner over there, about 30 acres, was filled up with cabins and cottages and small homes. And where this racetrack is now, just to the east of us, they would go swimming in there. And it was quite a hangout for the folks here in Junction City.
Well-to-do.
Well-to-do. Yeah, well-to-do. And a lot of them were, obviously at that point in time, very new to the area. Everybody was a newbie.
Uh-huh.
You know, so that's generally